So this is something that's very important for young people to understand, and there are many sources of information now on the Internet. I think young people are educating themselves in droves, in addition to those who are too tired after work. But it's not easy, but it becomes easy when many people do things together. That's
Absolutely.
why the consciousness of our unity is so important.
It's interesting because I have a theory as well regarding why people don't want to do it. Even though we learn lessons, we don't want to actually take action. And I call it the teenage theory. You know, when a teenager is 13, 14, they don't want to learn from other people's experience. They want to find themselves and do things, make their own mistakes, and learn their own way. It's like, that's a mug's game. It's a Muppets game because they all end up making the same mistake. And you know what? I mean, should there be a God, I believe there is, or the universal consciousness looking down, she'll be laughing at us. She'll be thinking, oh my goodness, the same old pattern repeated again and again and again. And you mentioned about economics. I studied economics as an undergraduate, and economics is basically the study, as far as I'm concerned, of scarcity. So it is not in the interest, or in fact, forget the interest, it's not even in the mindset of an economist to even think of abundance. It is all about scarcity. So I totally, wholeheartedly agree with you on there, Elisabet. Now, during your various interviews, you talk about various things like holon. Now, what is a holon and what is a holarchy?
Okay, that's a very simple concept. It comes from Arthur Koestler. It just says that in nature, systems are embedded within each other. So in your body, a holon is any level of size in your body. For instance, a molecule, a tissue, or let's say a molecule, a cell, and then a tissue, and then an organ system in your body. Each of those size levels is within the next level up. That's all it means. So you can talk about the economic holarchy of an individual within a family, within a community, within an ecosystem, within a nation, a national economy, within a global economy. Or you can talk about planet Earth and the galaxy all the way up to the universe. So that's a very simple concept. The other concept that you need to understand my kind of evolution biology, besides holarchy, is that maturation cycle that I already talked about. So let me give you an example. In your body, you have all these levels of holarchy, and when every level is able to negotiate its self-interest with every other level, then you actually drive cooperation. For example, take a couple. A couple is a two-level holarchy. One level is the individuals. The second level is couplehood, which forms a new entity. So if you and your partner are trying to decide whether to go to the movies or to the opera Friday night, you're actually not just arguing with each other, but between levels of holarchy, you're negotiating because finances belong to the well-being of couplehood, not just to the well-being of each individual. So in your body, when your cells have to negotiate with the organs they're part of, then each level has to meet its self-interest, and certain cooperative compromises will be made. So the ability of every level to negotiate drives toward a cooperative system. When one level stops negotiating, if those cells no longer want to negotiate their self-interest, but instead turn self-interest into selfishness, we call it cancer. Because they're no longer negotiating with the whole, they're looking only at their own self-interest becoming selfishness, multiplying as fast as they can without regard to the whole. So it's an illness. And in the same sense, if we look at bodies like the World Trade Organization, who have now been given global power to decide what different countries and local economies can produce and export, then you have the same situation. There is no way to have a healthy global economy if the local economies don't have the power to negotiate for their self-interest. If things are all done at the level of the multinationals, then the economy will be sick and will collapse. We can count on that.
Okay, so Konstantin, what's your perception on this?
Well, I'll agree with Elisabet wholeheartedly with that, and like to add that when I talk about survival, I'm not talking about it on the most simple and obvious level, which is something that one observes from an outside perspective, the action or the reaction of an individual or group of individuals. I'm talking about right down to the subatomic particle level, where there is an aspect that drives one for whatever reason toward acting in negation to this particular negotiation, this particular understanding of self and cooperative state of being. And I see that the foundation for what I talk about as creativity is not about expressing one's thoughts, ideas, emotions, or capacities in a way where they're being either unique, special, or expressive, but rather being able to tune into a force that is constant, is expansive, and represents life in all its forms in terms of constant change and growth. So it's the ability to actually open up to that dynamic that teaches oneself about all the different faculties. My perception is that we have thoughts, we have emotions, we have intuition, we have our physical body that is basically sending data and information constantly via the senses to the brain, and then we have our observer. Now, we are very aware of the triune brain, the limbic system, the midbrain, the corpus callosum, and the higher brains, and the frontal lobe. But even amongst this, recent research has indicated there's also what is become known as the Buddha brain, and also via the solar plexus. That is the part of our body that is linked to the brain, which leads to the intuition. Now, if any of these faculties don't know themselves from within their own existence and their own function, let alone relay that sense of self to the other parts of the self, then how can one ever get to know what's really inside? So I go back to the simple statements or proverbs of great philosophers of the past, or scientists in the case of this particular aspect, Socrates saying, know thyself and you will know the movement of the spheres and the gods and all the universes. It's a very simple statement, but what does that actually mean fundamentally? And what Elisabet is talking about, from what I understand, is about getting to understand and know the self in such a way where there is a total sense of unity and harmony within the being, and that is what becomes your world outside of you.
You're listening to the Consciousness Revolution Show, and my name is Harun Rabbani. We have Dr. Elisabet Sahtouris as well as Konstantin Pavlidis on the call. Now, if you have any questions, by the way, particularly if you're a new listener, then all you need to do is type in your question on the left-hand side of the screen where it says Q&A, question and answer submission, and ping it across to me, and I will put it to either of our guests. Now we talked about cooperation, and also I want to ask about cooperation with nature, because as I read, apparently every single minute, Elisabet, 80 acres of Amazon forest is being destroyed every single minute of the day, 24 hours a day. We're starting to even poison our agriculture as well. Now, GM crops, genetically modified food, how does that affect us and our biology?
Well, we have a lot of problems there in getting to know ourselves individually and as part of this beautiful living planet. I don't like the word environment because it's an impersonal it, and often is taught to be just a pack of resources for human use. And we haven't understood how nature works, that nature recycles everything in its economy, for example, and there's no reason at all why we can't do that. There just hasn't been incentive in this juvenile corporate world that we're still in. There has been no incentive to recycle. But once we get it that that's important, we have so many creative young people who will build us technologies that don't contain toxins and that are fully